Hi, what's up? How are you? I hope you're doing good. I hope you're having a good morning, afternoon, evening, or night. I always get them confused from on Book Talk. And I've started doing a sort of a series. I don't know if it's a series yet. It's just one talk yet for now. But I started doing an edition where it's sort of a drunken recommendation edition. And I got this comment on Book Talk. And this isn't per se horror recommendations, but it is not really even a thriller recommendations, but it is sort of a disturbing recommendations. And these are some of the disturbing books that I loved. When I was going through the shelves to pick up the disturbing books that I liked, I found a lot. And I think it's like a huge part of my taste in books, whether it's fantasy, whether it's fiction, whether it's non-fiction. I always prefer something that's a little bit more disturbing. I don't know why, but there are some psychological fire to pick up some disturbing books that I personally like to share them with whomever would be deranged enough to click here. So the first book that I picked up is actually a recent read, but a really good recent read, and that is Verity by Coho. Verity by Coho follows a struggling writer who gets the opportunity of a lifetime to finish a series of this very, very highly acclaimed and highly successful author who's in the middle of writing their own series, and they got sick and they weren't able to finish the series. They were stuck in a coma. They were basically a fucking vegetable and they were stuck in a coma. And Ashlyn Lowen, the author that we follow, gets to the opportunity or the chance to finish that series for them. And she gets invited to their house, and we get to meet a bunch of characters. We have the vegetable, and then we have the other author, and then we have Jeremy, who is the vegetable's husband, and their kids. And then Lowen is supposed to look through the vegetable's office and gather some information about the series, so she's able to have some ideas and outline the series and finish it. And she finds a manuscript that changes everything. It changes the way we see the vegetable, the way we see Jeremy, the way we see the entire house, the way we see the entire family. It absolutely changes everything. And it gets darker and darker the more you get into the manuscript, but I could not put it down. First POV, which is Ashley's, the author that gets invited to do the series, and then the POV of the vegetable, but her manuscript. We get to read the manuscript, and we get it from the start until the ending. And every time I read a chapter from the manuscript, I just want to know what Ashley thinks about what she just read. And every time I read what Ashley thinks about what she just read, she finishes the chapter with saying, I want to read more of the manuscript, and then I flip the page and it's the manuscript and I want to read more of it as well. So it's a book that is highly a page turner, and I've spoken about it before since I've read it actually, which was recent, and it has gotten me interested in a lot more of Coho books. And I am a fan of the author and a huge fan of the books, but check the trigger warning. I mean, it's a disturbing book recommendation. Check the trigger warnings for every book you see. But it's a highly recommended book. You might love it or you might hate it. And there are some parts in the manuscript that are... The next book that I loved so much is also a book that I've read this year. This is the year of me picking up my reading again, because I've been slacking last year. I think I've read like the entirety of the year. I read Song of Achilles, I read The Idiot by I was gonna say Bukowski, Jesus. I read The Idiot by Fyodor Dostoevsky, and what else? Like a couple short stories. So like in an entire year, I've only read like 4 or 5 books, but so this is the year. Like every book recommendation is gonna be a recommendation that I've read this year. And this is The Cellar by Natasha Preston. I loved this book so much. It was highly disturbing, and it made me feel disturbed even in things that aren't supposed to be triggering to me personally. So I would, before even suggesting it, I would highly suggest that you check the trigger warnings. Please click the trigger warnings. But The Cellar follows Summer and I damn near forgot her name because they kept calling her a different name throughout the book. But the story follows Summer, and she is a 16-year-old, and we follow her as she's going through her life in the first chapter or the first two chapters. And then she goes out to a club, and someone comes out of the bushes and he calls her by a different name. He says Lily. Actually, the back of the book says Lily. My stomach dropped as a tall, dark-haired man stepped into view. Had he been hiding between the trees? No, sorry, gulping. I took a step back. I'm not Lily. He shook his head, a satisfied grin on his face. No, you are Lily. I'm Summer. You have the wrong person, you utter freak. I could hear my pulse crashing in my ears. How stupid to give him my real name. He continued to stare at me, smiling. It made me feel sick. You are Lily, he repeated. Before I could blink, he threw his arms forward and grabbed me. I tried to shout, but he clasped his hand over my mouth, muffling my screams. My heart raced. I'm going to die. And we follow as she gets kidnapped by this strange man that was hiding in the bushes, and as he's taken her captive for 4 months, I think. 4 months, Summer is trapped in a cellar with the man who took her and 3 other girls, Rose, Poppy, and Violet, his perfect pure flowers, his family. But flowers can't survive long, cut off from the sun, and time is running out. He takes her into a cellar, and as soon as she goes into that cellar, we find out that he has 3 other women there, and one of them, we are dealing with Stockholm Syndrome, not to spoil anything, and it is incredibly disturbing. And the one thing that I loved about this book is that we get a POV of the kidnapper as well. His name is Clover, and we get a POV from Clover as well. And I thought it was extremely interesting to have a POV from the villain himself to see how their mind works. And I thought the author did an amazing job in researching Stockholm Syndrome, in researching the POVs from the victims syndrome, from the victims POV, and in researching the kidnapper. And I thought it was such a page turner, and although disturbing, brilliantly written, and I would recommend it if you are struggling, especially if you're struggling with a slump read. Both Verity and The Cellar are such an amazing books for getting out of a slump. The third book that is also such a recent read, I think I just read it at the beginning of last month. It is No Longer Human by Osama Desai. It follows a character that is so afraid of people's rejection or people abandonment that they change themselves completely, like utterly and completely. And we follow, it's from their POV. I forgot if it's a first person. Yeah, it's from a first person's POV, and we get to see how intricate the human brain is and how intricate the human personality itself is, and how far someone would go for the satisfaction of others. And the ending is absolutely heartbreaking, and the story, the entire story throughout the chapters is as well absolutely heartbreaking. And we get to follow someone that is extremely mentally ill, who is trying to hold on to anything they have to stay alive, to be honest, and to get the satisfaction of people by thinking if they make someone happy, then they would be happy, and how disturbing that can be to their psyche, and how incredible something we do while thinking that it is helpful to us can be extremely damaging. The last book that I would recommend is a book that I also read at the beginning of this year, and I cannot stop thinking about it, and I really would love to reread it again, and that is Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. Gillian Flynn is notorious for Gone Girl, and I haven't read Gone Girl yet. It's not available for me, and I've been looking for it everywhere, and I would love to get my hands on it. Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn is not hyped enough. Gone Girl is hyped as shit. I have not read it, but after reading Sharp Objects, I have no doubt that it's going to exceed my expectations, but this one is not hyped enough. It follows the story of a reporter named Camille, and we are reading from her point of view, and she is a reporter that gets sent back to her hometown, where a series of disturbing crimes are happening against children or young girls or teen girls, and she goes back into her nightmare of a home with her nightmare of a mother, and we follow such a disturbing set of characters is incredible, because you see her mom and you don't know how you feel about her. And one chapter you're like, oh, she loves her daughter and we like her and we understand because she's been through something. And then another chapter you're just like, what the hell is happening with this woman? And then we follow her younger half-sister, and it's the same. We follow Camille as she tries to undo years of damage, absolutely years of damage throughout generations. Her mother is a hypochondriac, and she's a hypochondriac in a disturbing way. She's not just a hypochondriac in an innocent way, and I thought it was brilliant to showcase differences in different mental illnesses. And Camille herself suffers from self-harm, and we follow her as she just gets out of the psych ward and going back into work. And we follow her story between past, present, and future, and what things, generations of damage done to her in the present, and how that can hold on to you and linger even in the future. And I thought some of it was heartbreaking, it was disturbing, and as all of the other books that I just recommended, check the trigger warnings. This one is very, very triggering, and the writing, Gillian Fling's writing is surreal, to say the least. It didn't just put me there, it wasn't just like escapism and it put me there. It was raw. That's the one word that I kept thinking about to describe the book as I was reading it. It was surreal and it was raw, and it didn't just make me feel things, it made me feel things extremely well, to the point where I could like taste things and smell things while reading the book. Thank you so much for watching, for being here, for liking, commenting, disliking, subscribing, or interacting in any way, shape, or form with the channel. I'm so close to 100, which is incredibly amazing. And I'm grateful for that. So thank you so much for that. And yeah, I'll see you next video. Bye.